You know, every week we come together, and one of us, myself or Wanji or Chongji and Buppo, and everybody gives talks once in a while. And as Buddhists, it's kind of a fun journey because we don't have like a lectionary, right? We don't have anything that we're supposed to actually talk about. In fact, Dharma talks, we're not supposed to so much be about doctrine and dogma and orthodoxy. It's always supposed to just tie us right back to our practice. And that's where Buddhism is somewhat unique, in that we have a lot of doctrine. We've got the Pali Canon, we've got the Mahayana Prajna Paramita literature, and we've got tons of this Vajrayana stuff floating around, everything from how to die, and in Japanese literature, how to just sit on your butt. I mean, it's very simple, right? But we have tons of expounding about it. So to do this, it's a prompt for those of us that occasionally speak in front of others to really sort of pay attention to our lives. It's a great move into great question. Well, what can I talk about today? What's going on in the world around me that I can speak about? So, knowing that secret that we don't actually get to plan ahead for this until maybe the last moment, something I took note of today, I was listening to another Buddhist teacher give an interview on like CNN. And this person is a Buddhist teacher, not to name names, but they're big name Buddhist teachers. They've been around for a really long time. And it's been interesting to see the evolution. I'm very young, but in some cases to hear about the evolution and to watch it in my own lifetime that's taken place in the Western practice of the Dharma. What I noted in this interview was that this teacher said, and they were speaking of Thich Nhat Hanh actually, and they said Thich Nhat Hanh is a Vietnamese meditation master. And the whole interview goes on about meditation, about mindfulness, about stewarding your presence. Never once was there any mention of Buddhism. This is very common in the West today, right? We have the advent of mindfulness-based cognitive therapy. For a lot of reasons, we turn this not Buddhist element of meditation because it's a good way to sell a book to a wider audience or sell some sort of seminar. And that's okay too. That's neither good nor bad. But it's interesting when we start seeing how this deviates from the practice of Buddhist meditation to become something else. In the West, struggling with our Judeo-Christian situational karma, we all have this idea of there's some innate inherent goodness inside of me. We have a soul, or there's some universalist concept that it's always going to end in its final, resting place, which is in the presence of the divine. We don't really have that in Buddhism. But yet we have it turned into this. And of course, just sitting as enlightenment every moment, no matter how much you check or how much you're thinking while you're just sitting on the cushion, as the Japanese teachers say. So of course, we're already at our final destination, always this moment, this moment, this moment. But there's this propensity to sort of shift it into something else. The concept a lot comes up of Tathagata Garbha, of that of Buddha nature I've spoken to here before, where we look at its inherent goodness, right? And we search for that within ourselves, and when we find it, it provides some sort of basis for all the not so good things that maybe we think and do that we can, but I can justify it because at my core, I'm this. And that's funny when we deviate away from the Buddhist identity of meditation. And that's not to say there's not plenty of traditions that have meditative, contemplative sort of teachings that are just as equally valid, because there are. It shows up in Islam, Sufism, and Christianity. They're all the same thing. Mystics always get to the same point. But with this secular mindfulness movement, it's really, really interesting in this culture, again, because we're thinking, well, if you just settle down and look within, you'll find that it's all good, you're all good, and it's all right. Well, what we know if we look at the philosophical basis for Buddhist meditation is that actually what you're going to find is a big mystery, a big don't know. What you're going to find is that you're not all inherently good inside, and you're not all inherently bad inside. Actually, you're both of those things and neither of them, right? So this is something of a problem, and I hear this a lot with students that come to me from different practice paths. They're like, well, I'm really struggling because I've got this really strong idea about what practice is supposed to be like, how I'm supposed to get to this place of equanimity, and then I come sit in this room, for instance, every week. We didn't have the crows. I think they turned off our electronic crows this week. That's nice. But we sit down and we just don't find what it is we're being sold. And that's why I'm sort of a Buddhist fundamentalist in so much as we have 4 basic teachings that we always need to return to. Fundamentalist. What are the fundamentals of Buddhism? The reason that I like to teach Buddhist meditation is because it gives us a direction. Just doing mindfulness, just doing meditation is looking into the huge array of potential phenomena and human experience, and we don't really know where to go or what to do. You have to have some treks. You have to have a road. You have to have some, some direction. That's very important with spiritual practice. That's not to say you can't sit down and just look inside yourself and come up with something. That's possible. But I'll tell you, in Buddhist time, 26, 28, 3,000 years ago, whatever the archaeologists are saying these days, there were a lot of people doing just that. And all of them are coming up with sort of different solutions, and very few of them have survived into this day. We have this unique tradition of a continual evolution of philosophy that's supported by practice, because Buddhism is first and foremost a practice, but it is supported by a philosophy. We cannot negate either one of those. If you think about it too much, you're not going to get it. If you don't think about it enough, you're also not going to get it. We have a saying in our tradition that it's not too tight, not too loose. And when we start to examine the cogs that have moved the tradition forward into our modern day, it's really cohesive, actually, when we look at the fundamentals. And we have our Four Noble Truths. What brings us to contemplative practice, right? Well, Noble Truth number one is dukkha. Life has the potential to not be so good sometimes. It doesn't mean life is all suffering. We all know that. We've all had valuable experience. We have really good, happy days, and we have other days that are kind of in the ruts, and that's okay. So we acknowledge that. Then we look, okay, well, if that's the case, looking within myself and outside of myself, Buddhism is neither internal nor external. It's these two things coming one. Well, where does that arise from? Well, it arises from my craving and desire for things not present just now in this very moment, and my attachment to things that are inherently impermanent as if they were not. My treatment of the world around me and the states inside of me as if they were unchanging, if they had some self-arising identity, some solidity that wasn't subject to shifting over time. So that's what gives rise to maybe the not-so-good experience. And then the other two noble truths that we have are, well, if this first thing, dukkha, exists, so too and for the same reason must its opposite, because this is a non-dual tradition. So nirvana or nirodha, the cessation of this suffering, is possible through stewarding reality just as it is, which is what the fourth noble truth says. It's the noble eightfold path, which says if we cultivate right view, right, presence, mindfulness, meditation, right effort, concentration, yada, 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 right this, right that, we gain some sort of clarity. And within the practice of Buddhism, if we really study and look at the philosophical basis, what we realize is that right is not righteousness, correct, perfect. They all mean just what is happening now. So that means if I'm having some seemingly errant thought or emotion inside of me, that's okay. If I'm having some great bodhisattva direction and inspiration to go out and save the world inside of me, that's okay too. We don't negate anything. But it's dangerous to go down contemplative practice without a direction, is what I'm trying to say. So if you're going to do this, I invite you to use your minds. I don't care if you have some sort of Christian identity, that's great, that's wonderful. I don't care if you have some sort of Islamic identity or Hindu identity or Shinto identity or Buddhist identity, that's okay. But give yourself some direction to follow. There's an old Western adage that you chase too many rabbits down a hole, guess what? You come up with a hungry belly at the end of the day. Or if you're a Buddhist and ahimsa, nonviolent, no furry pet, right? So find something that speaks to your heart. Find some language that you're comfortable with and then utilize it. Then go forth practicing. Not too tight, not too loose. Don't gravitate too much to the mind and don't gravitate too much to letting the mind go. But find a direction that allows you to have some structural basis for growth. Because if you don't have that, you're going to have problems.